All right, everybody. We're in Nashville, Tennessee, and this guy, you may have seen this mug before, Hermann Luttmann. Nice to finally see you face to face.
Yes, we finally got to meet face to face.
Right?
This is
And
wonderful.
Yeah, and so he's come all the way up from Knoxville, which apparently is only 2 or 3 hours away.
Yep, 2.5 hours away.
Yeah, and so we have been drinking water. We've been drinking whiskey
Yes.
and eating good fried chicken and barbecue
Yes.
here in Nashville. So, but for you, you couldn't participate in any of that. So Herman has been gracious enough to spend some time with me, and his partner is upstairs graciously waiting for us to stop talking about
Recovering
board games.
from drinking her second glass of wine for the day.
Yeah, she had a second glass of wine, and she's not. She wasn't real thrilled with the kind of. Hey, did you know that in 1917 something happened? So,
right.
so we're going to try and do a little chat here about the monstrous catalog that Herman has coming out, and apparently he's retired now, so we can expect.
I am. Yeah.
We can expect higher production. Right?
Hard to imagine, isn't it?
We want, instead of 10 games or 12, we're going to get like 20 games a
Yeah,
year.
right.
How many games did you publish last year?
Oh, last year?
Yeah, wasn't
no,
it?
No, last year wasn't that many.
No, it was
It
year
was
before.
only
When was
Most
it?
Fearful Sacrifice, I think, was the only one last year.
What was that? Was it 2 years ago that you came out with like 10 games or something?
I don't
like
think
that?
it was quite that many.
Didn't you almost break Richard Berg's record?
I was going for it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Joe Miranda, I think, might have a record. I'm not sure. But yeah, there was 1 year. I guess it was last year that I think it was only Most Fearful Sacrifice came out last year.
Well, only
Yeah.
only that. Only
that was a lot of work.
NFS,
That was a
yeah.
year's worth of work. So
A year's worth of development,
Yeah.
sold out immediately, and then a second print run, super successful,
yes, as a matter
very
of fact,
popular.
As a matter of fact, Mark just told me that he's going to have to order more copies of the
gosh.
second edition because when he opened it up for pre-orders after the Kickstarter, we got so many pre-orders
Oh shoot!
that he's going to have to up the order a bit.
Nice.
But I appreciate
nice.
all the support. I mean, the game was a lot of work, and it was a great team effort by all the development team and the artists and Mark and everything. So thank you for all the support. But yeah, they're doing great.
Very cool,
Second
very
edition's
cool.
doing great.
And what are we drinking, by the way?
So this is Bell Mead, which some of you have seen me drink before on the show.
It's got a good nose to it, doesn't it?
This is a local distillery here in Nashville, Nelson Brothers, and this is their signature bourbon version label, whatever. But it's
got a
fantastic.
little, it feels like it's got a little bit of rye in it somewhere.
It's got a little spice to it,
A
yeah.
little spice, a little
Yep.
brass to it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so nice, very nice. So excellent, and thank you for the dram.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
Thank you for dinner.
Yep.
We had dinner at a great place called The Row, right next door to the hotel over here.
Yeah.
And man, we had some brisket and some fried
Dude, some
chicken.
fried
and,
chicken was
oh,
ridiculous.
That was great.
Yeah,
That
that
was
was
great.
good.
Nashville's fun.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's do this now, folks. Just to prep you, since we're only 3 minutes into this, if you're expecting a designer deep dive, that may be the title that we're going to use for this, but it's
Yeah.
not what's happening, because a certain guy gets a little uncomfortable.
I'm not very deep.
It's not very deep, and we're not diving anywhere. So
That's right.
But we are going to talk about the sort of catalog that he's allowed to share, that Herman has coming out over the next 12, 24 months.
Mm-hmm.
Get us excited about some of the new things that are going on, and we are going to ask some hard questions. I've kind of baited him that it's going to be easy.
Oh, no.
That it's easy, but we will get some hard questions in.
All right.
So let's do this. So tell us what's currently in pre-production. Now we've got the GMT title, which is not a war game. So we'll talk about that first to get that out of the way. I'm just kidding. It's a game that I have on pre-order.
That is, yeah. So
Plum Island.
the
right?
Plum Island Horror
Right.
is from GMT. That is a major project, which all GMT games are major
Yeah,
projects. This
right.
one was a really big, and it's very different for GMT because, as you said, it's not a war game in the strictest sense of the word, but there is conflict in it.
Yeah, there is conflict, and,
Yes.
it's not a history game.
It's not a history game.
It's just good old zombies.
More of, if people are familiar with Dawn of the Zeds, it was more of my second take on Dawn of the Zeds, which was designed primarily as a solitaire game originally,
right.
and this was my effort to do something like that, but a cooperative game.
Right.
So, asymmetrical factions, up to 4 people can play together. I've developed a real love for cooperative games over the last few years.
Right.
We had a Saturday group that got together, and as you know, I mean, one of the downsides of wargaming is that you can't really play with more than 2 people, right?
Right.
So
It's
you got
pretty
4
hard.
guys at a table, like, hey, let's play something together. And so we got into a lot of these cooperative games where we're all working together to solve a problem, which is a different dynamic than most war games, where it's me against you. It's us playing together.
Yes.
So I kind of like that because it's a different feel.
Yeah.
So Plum Island Horror was that attempt to do that kind of game. It is tongue in cheek.
Yes.
I do like to have fun.
Yes. I've noticed that about you. Even in the last couple of hours, that seems to be a recurring theme.
Well, as I mentioned to Kev before, you know, when you're working 2 jobs, you know, and you have gaming time, I've just because, you know, when I was gaming, I wanted to have fun, right? And I didn't want to do a lot of bookkeeping because that's what I did for a living, right? And
I'm surprised, actually, in regards to that the bean counter in you didn't come out and say, "Man, I could do a better job with a logistics system for OCS."
Oh God, no! Whoa.
Right? That's not
something
you. So
pure hell to me is to sit around counting things for a game. So really, Dawn of the Zeds was kind of my jumping off point as far as like, hey, people were responding to that game in that they weren't coming back to me with a rules listing of like, I did this rule and I did that rule, and they were just telling me a story about what happened in the game. It was a narrative.
Right.
And it wasn't about the game. It was, they developed this thing into a story using the game as a vehicle to tell the story.
Perfect.
And they were laughing, and you know, even when they got killed and everything, it was like, oh, you know, Pickles was defending the bridge, and then this happened, and you know. So I like that feel. When I got into this designing thing, I didn't want to get stuck in a rut of just doing a certain system all the time, and you know, nauseum.
Yes.
I wanted to do different things, so Plum Island Horror is an example of that.
Which is a real step to the side. I know that you've done some other horror, sort of
sci-fi and all that,
alternate stuff, but it's a major step aside from your primary American Civil. Like, you're known, if you say Hermann Luttmann, everyone goes, "Oh, American Civil War."
Right.
They don't really know your full body of your work, right? Like Race to the Sea was a very different game. While it's a World War I game, and it's a war game, it's a very different game, and that mechanically plays.
It is, and ironically, that system started out with a zombie game called Dead Reckoning.
Yes, which is also a great game.
Which I know Mo likes. And so one of the great things about designing for small companies like Tiny Battle is that you can experiment, with different ideas and mechanics. And Dead Reckoning was an attempt to do something totally different. And we threw it out there, and it kind of stuck. And then we took it and developed it for Race to the Sea and Steamroller. And so it's kind of funny that it was a non-war game that actually birthed war game design.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, so there's a nexus there, isn't there? I think when you play a lot of non-war games and a lot of cooperative games, and that seems to bring a fresh set of energy to your design and your creativity for war games. You're trying to look at things from a different perspective.
Definitely does. For example, Plum Island Horror in particular has ideas of mechanical ideas from, oh my God, 6-7 other non-war games that I've played. Descent and Aeon's End and all sorts of other, And is that good?
Yeah, you're good. I like, if I don't fidget with the camera, then there's an issue.
And so that game was like a culmination of a lot of other games that fit that genre, and allowed me to do it mechanically. But even with war games, so I have a new war game coming out from White Dog Games called By Iron and Blood, which is the Battle of Königsgrätz in 1866, the culminating battle of the Austrian-Prussian War. And in that game system, I have a totally different activation system that I've developed, which actually got inspired by a Ameritrash game called Conan the Barbarian.
Okay, I've heard of it, but not played it.
And also Batman Gotham City, and it uses this river, what they call the river system. I don't know if that's the official name of it, but they call it a river system. And it makes you pre-plan all your activations And if you plan correctly, they're cheaper to activate. If you didn't plan correctly, they're more expensive
You
to
want to
activate.
make changes or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like with the most fearful sacrifice, it has kind of that idea too with the division priorities, right?
Right. Right.
But that can change turn to turn, right? So
Yes.
it's more short term. Like this turn, I want this division to be priority number one.
Right,
Maybe next
right,
turn.
right, right.
With the river system, it's more of a long term type of thing. So you have
Okay.
to think ahead so that when the river starts flowing. So the idea is that the armies in the front of the river in this line are cheaper to activate, but after you activate them, you pick up the marker and it goes to the end of the
And
line, and it
more
becomes very
expensive.
expensive.
So
So
there's
if you want to do it twice in a row, it's going to cost you a lot.
Right.
So the idea is the way you line them up is kind of in your head, like this is how I want them to activate in that order.
And that's just on your perception of what's going to happen.
Correct.
So if I'm looking at, let's say I've got 3 divisions in this hypothetical battle, and Division 1 needs to capture place A, but Division B needs to capture place C, and in between is Division 3's got to go work out how to get B. How many times does A need to attack
Right.
the first place and all
And-
all that sort of stuff? So that
And the
becomes-
markers are flipped face down, so you can't look over at your opponent and know what
see
he's
what
going to
he's
attack.
gonna do,
Right.
yeah.
So here's an example of, like, say, a mechanic that came from a non-war game that we can translate to a war game.
Translates perfectly, right?
It does.
A fog of war,
that's
right?
what I thought. It's like, why can't this work for a war game?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't always have to be
Right.
I go, you go,
Right. Sure.
locking Zox,
Right. 1d6.
CRT, odd CRT.
1 to 3 to 5
Right.
to 1, right? Or whatever it is.
Right. I need one more factor to get
Yeah.
3 to 1 odds.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
the type
yeah.
of thing. So yeah. So the other games definitely help in that regard.
All right. So Plum Island Horror, it's already on a relative basis a success based on the pre-orders to date. I think you've done extremely well there.
Yeah, we may. Once we get really close to the launch-off point, which we should, we could be up into 1,200 to 1,300,
Right. Which is
pre-orders,
fantastic.
yeah.
So that means they're probably going to print a couple of grand, couple thousand,
I
maybe
would-
3,000, something
I
like
think
that.
so. I think so.
So it's going to be around for a while. Right?
And I know they told me that they want to market it as a mass market game, not just a war game market.
Hopefully you negotiated your royalties correctly for this one, right?
They are what they are. And
That's funny.
so maybe guys like Rodney Smith, if you know who Rodney Smith is,
Sure.
over at How to Play.
Yeah.
You know, he might get a copy,
Yeah, Rado
do
runs
something,
through
and yeah, you know, who knows? I'm hoping so. Like I said before, I don't like to get stuck in a rut. So even like say with the blind sword system, I've designed 3 of them, right? The first 3,
Right.
and I'm kind of done. Like personally, I'm kind of done with that because other designers
Right.
have picked that up.
Now, and I've got to say, I think your approach there with building a system that so many other designers have just said, hey, can I go do the Battle of X for the American Civil War, is fantastic. And it harkens to the coin system. And I don't know. I don't know what the relationship there is with that system to the incremental designers beyond Volky, right? But it's interesting to me to see how many, not only designers, but how many publishers are like, oh, a Hermann Luttmann game? Sure. Oh, yeah, let's do a Hermann Luttmann game? No, sure. GMT, Revolution, Flying Pigs. Everyone is happy to publish one of your games.
Well, thank you.
Well, they are. I mean, it's not. I'm not. I'm
and
not
I do like-
blowing
I do
sunshine
like-
up your backside. I'm just saying, man. Everyone.
I
wants
do
to,
like to design for different
Yeah,
publishers.
yeah.
You know, not all the eggs in one basket type of
Sure,
thing.
sure.
Every publisher offers different
terms.
terms, talents, approaches, and I appreciate doing all that. And like I said, the smaller companies like Tiny Battle and White Dog, you can kind of throw stuff out there that's maybe a GMT wouldn't do because it's a little risky, you know. So yeah, there's different opportunities.
As you mentioned earlier on, I think and obviously, I think we all appreciate GMT's become the big dog in the
absolutely
system, and it's far more systematic than a lot of other companies are right today. So
it's very and not as a denigration, but very corporate in the sense that they've got
Well-structured,
development teams, they've got an order of doing everything.
less errors.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate that. And then, like I said, I don't know very many companies that could have done the most fearful sacrifice other than Flying Pig.
Right.
Who does 15 square foot hard mounted maps,
right? And
with gigantic counters,
who
right?
who could make that happen and make it as fabulous, right?
Right.
And make the investment, because that's a big bet, huge bet.
It is a huge bet, and it's something that Mark and I discussed for a while, and then we had Rick Barber, God rest his soul, was on board, and we were like, well, what better artist to have gigantic hexes for than Rick Barber? He needs gigantic hexes to appreciate his artwork, and thankfully Mark was willing to do that. So
it's such a glorious that system. Well, so the system itself is fantastic, but the map is so vibrant and so rich, and because it's writ large with those larger hexes, it's just stunning and overwhelming to sit and look at that battlefield and go, how the hell did all these guys do all those things in those 3 days and come out with the result they came out with, right? You just sit there and go, damn, right?
It is amazing. I remember going to Gettysburg and standing in the wheat field and thinking how small it was, it is. Right. And thinking that, oh my God, 20 brigades passed through here and fought, and it's inconceivable. Actually, it really is. And there was no better person other than Rick to do that Gettysburg.
He really did that battle, that map justice, and that battle justice, I think.
And then Jose Fara did the counters for it, and you know, as many of you know, I came into this hobby really through a miniatures background, so I appreciate all the uniform details and the minutia of all that. And luckily Jose was on board with me. So when I said that, you know, hey, Jose, let's make I found out that all the North Carolinians had really proper Confederate uniforms. For some reason, they had a connection in England to get the true gray uniforms. So they were in pure gray. If you look at the North Carolina counters, and I'm sure Fearful Sacrifice, you'll see that they actually look different. And they don't look as motley as the rest of the Confederates.
As the Budnut guys. Right?
That's right. And you'll see, my friend Steve Pointinger mentioned dog mascots for some of the, so we did the dog mascots. And when I mentioned that to Jose, he was right on board. He put the exact dog on the mascot. Cool. I swear to God, he's fantastic. So you combine that kind of artistry on the counters with the map, and you got the perfect combination. It was wonderful.
It's fascinating. All right, so kind of meandering around a little bit, but that's cool. That's the benefit of libations. So what do you have currently in development that is close to production for 2023?
Okay.
Let's start there, and then we'll look at what's coming down the pipe.
I know this is going to sound weird, but I actually have to think about this because this is a long list of stuff.
You have a moment.
We've had a couple COVID years, so things have been delayed, and
And so you've had things that have been well developed and done, and then they're sort of tabled.
Right. So coming out next will be by Iron and Blood, the Battle of Königsgrätz by White Dog Games. Hope you guys will try that out. That's like I said, it's a brand new system. Artwork by Ilya Korsovich, whatever.
Yep.
What else we got? So this year, also coming out from Legion Games, will finally be Miracle at Dunkirk. That's been in the works for a while.
I've been waiting on that one. I got to say, I've had that on pre-order for a long time.
That thing's been hanging around for a long time.
Have we got enough orders in for that? Do I need to
there's almost 500 orders.
Okay.
So it's made its mark. I think 3 or 4 years ago. It's just that Legion, for whatever reasons, Legion's been very slow getting stuff out, and it's supposed to come out this year. We have Edmund Hudson's doing the map for it, so that's done, and it's just a matter now of just finishing. I mean, the design's finished. It's just a matter of finishing it up.
Issues,
So that'll be out this year. Plum Island Horror, obviously. What else? Boy, there's some. I'm trying to get all my ducks in a row here.
That's okay. So let's do this. So let's talk about American Civil War games. What American Civil War games? Doesn't matter which publisher.
Okay, so I just came out with The Hill of Death, The Tiny Battle, which is a brand new Civil War series. So I know people yell at me for constantly changing my swords, but it's just a matter of...
Not that I would say anything, but yes.
It's just, I can't help but fiddle with it.
Right,
You
right.
change complexities, you change scales, and I'm like, all right, I have to redesign this a little bit. So the Shattered Union series, which the Hill of Death is part of, is a slightly is smaller footprint, more accessible design, and obscure battles.
Okay,
Right? So you're not
okay.
going to get a Gettysburg battle.
Right.
Well, actually, you are going to get a Gettysburg battle. Claude's going to do the fourth day of Gettysburg,
Oh,
the day after the end of the battle. Yes,
the pursuit.
Meade
Right.
attacking Lee.
Right.
I just did the Champion Hill was the first one, and Claude's going to do the next one, which will be out, I think, in February, called Conquering the Valley, which will be about Port Republic and Cross Keys. And then I will be doing the third battle, which is the Battle of Fredericksburg,
Okay.
which I know is a big battle, popular battle, but it's not been gamed very often.
Right.
And I always accept challenges, so I decided to do
Why
that.
not? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely. So what else we got? I did Legion. For Revolution games, instead of doing another Blind Sword Civil War title, I've been in discussion with him. We're going to do Napoleonics. So there's going to be a brand new series started.
Finally. Yeah, I've been waiting
Yes.
for this. Okay.
So
So,
we're gonna
tell me
do-
more.
Yes, so we're going to do. I don't want to call it Blind Swords Napoleonics, but it's
Right,
basically
right.
Blind Swords Napoleonics. But I obviously have to change the scale and things like that. I mean, Napoleonic
Where,
warfare is
where,
different than.
where are you going to hit? Brigade, regimental?
Well, we're going to go big. So the first
divisional?
battle,
You're going to go first battle?
is going to be the Battle of Leipzig.
Love it.
Yep.
Love
So
it.
we're gonna
It's
do division-
huge,
yes,
dude. Okay,
division
so divisional.
pieces,
Shoot.
And you won't have to worry about facing or formations. I've come up with a system that it's going to feel like Napoleonics without all the gritty nonsense that you
Okay,
have to
yeah,
deal
yeah,
with,
all
all
the-
the granularity.
Well, and you shouldn't at divisional scale, really.
No.
Right.
But you can still feel like you're doing Napoleonics, by the way. So my dirty little secret is you build the tactical feel of all these periods into your events,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Either your event shits or cards, whatever you're doing,
Right.
and that's what I'm going to do with the Napoleonics.
So we'll have a
system.
similar set of like Black Swan Blind Swords
Yes.
style cards and event tactical,
Right.
tactical
And then
cards.
what
and
I've done
tactical
is
events.
I had a long talk with Richard and Roger over at Revolution Games, and every type of combat for each side is going to have a different CRT. So what we're going to do is we're going to fine tune the CRTs so that it's a different CRT if you're doing a cavalry charge as opposed to an infantry assault or a bombardment. And then what you do is you build into those tables all that feel that's
Right, so
bounced
you're
through
gonna
and
have- right.
squares and all
You're
that
gonna
kind of
have
stuff.
those events, kind of like you did in the
Right.
the outlier events and things like
Exactly.
that.
So if you roll doubles on a cavalry charge
Right.
table, you'll go into another subset of
Yep.
stuff that,
Yep.
that gives you the feel for that.
result subset, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the big news for Revolution Games. Is
So
we're going to do some
Leipzig
Napoleonic.
first,
Leipzig first,
Leipzig, sorry, yes.
and then well, I did them kind of as a tribute to my mother who passed away a couple of years ago, and she was originally born in Leipzig,
Huh,
so
okay.
and she lived very close to the battlefield. So I always promised her, I said, I'm going to do a Battle of Leipzig game.
Well, there you go. Now you fulfilled.
And it was
that.
one of my favorite SPI games.
Right.
I liked it because it was one of those games you could play multiplayer, right?
Yep,
And
it's big
without
enough.
too much progress.
Yep.
It's big enough, and you got multiple allied armies
Yep.
coming in. So that's Revolution. I know I'm forgetting somebody.
So
We
is
gotta go down
Revolution? Is that going to be how many maps will that be? Do you think?
there. It's going to be. Well, it'll be two halves of the battlefield, right? So there'll be
Okay.
a north part and a south part.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's probably going to be the standard size for the whole series.
Okay.
What else we got? We have. Well, I just spoke to. I think I can let this go. I'm not sure. We'll find out. I just spoke to Steve Jones at Blue Panther. He has some games that he's publishing, and he asked me if we would be willing to do something with him. And I spoke to him and Ryan Heilman, who is the designer of Brave Little
Yep.
Belgium,
right,
and
right. The
White
the famous
Eagle Defiant, I think.
the famous CSR award
Right.
winner.
And so we are going to do. It's a war game. It's not historical. We're going to do a fantasy war game. Think Game of Thrones type of
Oh, really?
medieval fantasy warfare.
Okay.
Hex and counter.
Okay. And is this going to be what sort of scale? What sort of is
Oh, I have no idea.
You have no idea?
All I know is it's going to be fun.
Oh,
That's
okay.
it, yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah, so-
Well, so the two of you are going to collaborate on that.
Well, he's going to be a developer.
Develop. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting.
Mhm.
And so, what about? Now, I know that. So you're doing that with, you said, with Blue Panther. But
Mhm.
what else? What else were you looking at doing with Blue Panther? Anything else, or is it just that
No,
one?
just
title?
that.
Just that one title. Okay.
For White Dog,
is he actively recruiting developers and designers?
I think
or
Ryan's going to be his developer.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he's actively recruiting. You know, I'm sure
It's
he's
interesting
asking people.
because I always saw Blue Panther as I'm a designer and I want to get my game published, so I'll go to them
Mhm.
and do it on print on demand. And
Right.
he's now trying to change that a little bit and
Yeah,
be
he's
a
doing his own
publisher.
line of
His
games.
own line of
Right.
games.
So I think he does Schultz.
Yeah.
Schultz games.
Yeah,
Hollenspiel, White Dog.
and he does some
One
guys
more.
some guys out of Canada. That did the lace games, but
Yeah.
he did some smaller Finnish thing for them.
Right.
I saw that.
And I've always been a fan of Blue Panther's
Yep.
production value.
Right.
I have historical game company, Steve Kling's company, Historical Game LLC. That they do the small games on Saratoga, Luthen. They just released 55 Days of Peking.
I guess I am.
They have canvas maps.
Oh, yes, obviously I've been out on vacation or something because I don't know any of these titles.
All right, if you look them up, they'll
Okay, I'll
so
go check
anyway,
that out, okay.
yeah, they're great games. They're great small games. They all use the same system,
Okay.
and production value again is fantastic.
Right.
So I mean, Blue Panther does wonderful stuff. So yeah, I guess he's decided to get into
Very
the
cool. That's very
publishing,
cool.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right. So that's Blue Panther, Legion. So we
Right.
got ACW, Napoleonics, Something Funky, Medieval, and what else? What about your friends in Europe?
My friends in Europe, that would be Nuts Publishing.
Yes.
So I just had a discussion with them, and we are doing. I can partially blame you for this because of your Galaxy. What was that science fiction theory?
Galaxy's Edge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Galaxy's Edge. They approached me and asked me about doing a cooperative science fiction war game.
Really?
Yes. So, my developer Fred Manzo and I have been working on a game for about a year now called Assault on Zoltar, which is a science fiction cooperative war game where each player plays a mercenary company
Ah.
of space dudes.
Right. Space dudes. Yep.
And we're going to go invade this planet of Zoltar because we need to seize their resource of panaculum,
Vernacular.
Yes.
I love that. I love that.
which we need for our starships.
Got
and
it.
that's the only planet that's got it, so we're going to go get it.
We're taking it. It's like that uranium
Yes.
stuff. Yeah.
So they're really doing it up big. So they're going to have like standees and all
Oh,
sorts
cool.
and tile maps.
Nice.
And it's a whole series of scenarios where you can play them individually if you want, or you can play them all through as a campaign. So
Right, right.
there's actually like an RPG type of
Interesting.
level up and
Yeah.
making units elite because they performed well in the previous battle and that kind of
Space
stuff.
Marines.
Yes.
Yes.
We're not allowed to say that.
No. Oh, is that trademarked? or
Yeah, that's
something?
trademarked.
Is it really
Yes.
trademarked? That's bullshit. Just in case you're watching,
Yes.
whoever owns that trademark, that's
Yeah,
bullshit.
it'll be Games Workshop.
Oh, is it? Yeah,
Yes.
fuck, figures. Right.
But yeah, we've been playtesting that for a while now, and God, Fred and I, we've just had such a blast with it. Because so in typical non-war game style,
Yeah.
you have asymmetrical factions. So
Yes.
every company has its own little
Right.
peculiarities,
Each
strengths,
company
weaknesses,
does its
right?
own thing.
And they have very unique looking units and that kind of thing. So when you deploy them, every time you deploy, you use a different company and you get a different type of
different sort of
vibe,
skills and vibes, right?
yeah. And even the aliens have different formations that have different sets of units within that formation. So it scales out that if you're just playing in solitaire, it's one company and then one formation will face you in one set of maps. If you play with 3 companies, you have 3 enemy formations with 3 maps. And so every scenario has a different goal, and if you achieve that goal in a certain amount of time, you win some badges for your units, and you can give it to them, and they level up, you know, and that kind of thing. So they're very excited about it. It's still going to be another year because they're going to kickstart it in January, but they're going to get a writer to write some background narrative to it
to give it some context,
right?
So which is one of the challenges for, I think, sci-fi RPG style games, is you've got to have a really good story going back there to fill it in. There's a couple of games I've played in the past that you go, well, this is a really cool system, and solitaire or multiplayer, whatever it may be, but you miss the why. And you've got to kind of come up with the why behind it.
Right. So they want to hire a professional writer to write that whole background story of, you know, where do these guys come from? Some of them come from the asteroid belt, so they're called belters, and you know, of course, if people who watch The Expanse can get that reference, you know, and just give it context and depth and flavor, which I appreciate in these kinds of games. I have one secret project I can't talk about yet.
Yes, well, I'm not even going to try and tempt you to say anything. Right, it's going to pour some more whiskey in these glasses.
As far as White Dog Games gave me a challenge, Mike Kennedy over at White Dog Games, he said, "Can you design?" See, this is why I get into this thing. You know, it's like I don't want to just pump out the same thing. I have to be challenged.
Right. So I noticed that you just kind of basically said with blind swords, guys, go make the system.
Well, I was supposed to do, for example, Stones River, which is logical. It's right down the road over here.
Yeah.
Right. So I can go to the battlefield. And I was like, Roger, I've done it.
Yeah,
let somebody else. Claude's going to do it. Let him do it. I want to go on to other things. And
so someone throws a challenge in front of you, and you're like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I got into this whole design thing is it's just kind of a creative monster. It's just to get your creative juices going. And I think if I would just do 8 Blind Swords ACW games, after I'm just pumping them out, right? So I want to be able to try to create.
Right.
So Mike Kennedy says, can you do a game on Waterloo that's solitaire and 4 pages of rules?
Wow.
I said, I don't know, but I accept the challenge.
I accept the challenge. So would you do area movement for that?
No.
No?
I've actually already written the rules.
Okay.
I was so excited about it. I sat down and started to go.
It's going to be hex and counter.
It's going to be hex and counter. I don't know how it's going to turn out. This is really weird for me too. I don't even have the pieces or the map yet. I wrote the rules in like 3 days because I just got these ideas and I just started whacking them out. Wow. I guess game design often is like writing a novel. I guess it's just you get this inspiration and it just comes pouring out of you. And I actually have to start writing stuff down because the ideas are like you're in the shower and you go like, oh. Yeah. That's a great idea. Yeah. You gotta run and write it down.
And if you don't write it down, it's gone.
It's gone.
I have
it's absolutely gone.
Daily. Yeah. So all right. So mechanically, when you look at all the different things that when I look at a game, a buddy of mine said this to me one time. He goes, "Look, Kevin, don't try and explain the rules to me. Just tell me how do I move, how do I shoot, and how do I stay in supply." Right?
Okay.
Like the 3 basics, right?
Right.
So when you look at a game and a battle, how do you approach it? How do you go, well, shit, this is different?
Sometimes it depends on the publisher I'm doing it for. So some publishers, I will first say to them, what are my constraints?
Yeah, what are the boundaries, right? How many counter sheets, how many pages
of rules? Can I have 400 counters? Can I have 172 counters?
Right.
Is it one big map? Is it one, 11 by 17 map? That kind of thing.
Right.
That kind of gives me a general idea of what kind of scale I'm looking at. Then the next thing is like, which battle am I doing? And what are the key features of that battle? Like what's the story there, right? So to give you an example, my first Blind Swords game was Stonewall Sword. That was done on a battle that I knew nothing about, Battle of Cedar Mountain. I only found out about that battle because I went to a site called Obscure Battles by Berry. I forget his first name. I'm sorry. But it was Berry. And I read, I was like, oh, what's this? I've heard of Cedar Mountain, but I didn't know nothing about it. I started reading it and going, oh, this would make a great game, right? And it doesn't sound like a good game when you first look at it, right? And again, I like challenges, right? That's why I did a game on Pickett's Charge, because that was a challenge, right? How do you make a game out of Pickett's Charge? So, Stonewall Sword was written about Cedar Mountain, which was Banks versus Stonewall Jackson, the greatest, some will argue, the greatest Confederate general ever, against a Union general he beat up all the time in the valley.
Right.
Not only does Banks attack first, but he actually grabs some territory first. And you're going like, well, how is this possible, right? So when you read the story, I was like, oh my God, this makes such an intriguing story. So that game developed just out of the idea of, how do I make a game out of this and make it tense, right? And competitive, and how do you manipulate that situation to make it a great story? So, when I get a game idea, it's, well, how do I make this entertaining, first of all,
and fun?
As I've told you, right? Gaming's got to be fun. If it's not fun, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
It's got to be fun. And so, I'll take that battle and I'll like, all right, well, what are the key elements of it? So in Königsgrätz, the key drama, even though if you don't know the history of it, it's the Austrians are defending Königsgrätz, and here come the Prussians. They've invaded Austria in 1866. They've kicked the Austrians' ass for the most part, and they're coming to the final climatic battle.
Right.
But the problem is the Prussians have advanced with their First Army and their Elbe Army. They're outnumbered by the Austrians now, and they're waiting for the Second Army to come in on the flank of the Austrians. But they don't know when the Second Army is coming in.
Right.
So the whole first part of the battle is the Prussians trying to attack the Austrians, but they're outnumbered by the Austrians.
Right.
And they're waiting for the Second Army. So there's the drama.
There's the drama and the tension.
The drama is, I'm the Prussians, I'm fighting the Austrians, I'm praying that the Second Army comes in. How do I pin them, keep them busy, wear them down until the Second Army comes in?
Right.
So it's extracting that kind of drama out of each of those battles. Yeah.
So based on the 16 or 20 designer deep dives I've done, that's the first time I've heard that approach. So that's
okay.
Yeah, which is good because it's.
I think it's because I'm more of a narrative guy.
Yeah,
that's why Blind Swords got.
You're really pulling a narrative out of the battle and representing it into the game mechanics, and presenting that back as a complete game, and it may end up being a complete system, but you're trying to capture the essence of the battle. Whereas a lot of times
this goes back to, I want the games to play like the history books you read about the games, which is what triggered me to do Blind Swords in the beginning. Was I was reading about the battle and going, well, most of the war games I play can't do that.
Right.
They can't. Right. Things like that don't happen in my war game. How do I make them happen, or how do I at least create a vehicle for them to happen? And that was the whole thing about Blind Swords. Is it just came, that whole narrative, historical chaos element of military history wasn't present in the game, so I tried to inject that.
Yeah, I've been reading two books lately, sort of parallel. One was the Rommel Papers, and the other is The Conquering Tide by Ian Toll. And in each of those, there's these descriptive elements about particular aspects of the battle. And if you know Gazala or Guadalcanal or whatever the case may be, you know the general story, but when you see these little snippets and these guys start telling you about what happened and why it happened, you're like, I never knew any of that. You never experienced any of that in the battle at all. You don't. There's no random event to help you kind of capture that, or,
There's
or,
no-
or expose that nuance to you?
Right. There's no friendly fire. There's
Right.
no misidentifying friendly troops as
Right.
enemy troops,
Right.
or vice versa.
Right.
I always tell this story too. Fred went to a lecture by John Priest, who was wrote about the second day at Gettysburg, and one of the things he said that Fred related to me and that stuck to me was that modern people don't appreciate how much smoke and confusion develops on a Civil War battlefield
Right.
a couple hours into the battle,
Right.
where you think you can see just fine
Right.
100 yards
Right.
when you really can't, because
Right.
now all these these muskets are fired,
Yeah.
all this artillery fire,
Yeah.
all the smoke's floating
Yeah.
around, horses are screaming,
Right.
caissons are running, right? And what you take to be like, oh, it's an easy shot, it's 100 yards across an
Line of
open
sight.
field,
I got this.
they don't even know if that's the enemy or not.
Right. Yep.
So it's that kind of chaos that existed on the battlefield that wasn't translated into war games, which, was a common complaint about old war games. Is you got perfect intelligence about what the enemy, what the factors are, where they are, you even know when they're going to move.
Yes. Right. Right.
So the idea of a chit pull or a card pull is, well, now I'm not sure if I'm going to get to jump on this guy or not. I have to plan accordingly.
Right. Right.
What happens if he gets-
it's representing the chaos and the uncertainty, and I think there's a lot of gamers, and sometimes I'm one of those guys where I go, I know that this happened then, and you kind of
Right.
grit your teeth and go, all right, hell with it, I'll roll
Right.
with it, right? But the story that comes out of that is far richer than the deterministic
Right.
approach of,
Right.
okay, I followed this lockstep. I remember reading some CSW post years ago. Some guy said, I've been playing a certain Eastern Front system, and we'll leave the name out of it, and reading my history books and then playing the game, and I'm able to play it in sequence, in lockstep.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I'm not sure that's what I want to do across the entire Eastern Front at the battalion divisional scale, buddy. But
Well-
God bless you God bless you if that's an experience that enriches your life and your gameplay. That's cool. But I'm looking to be able to make decisions in an uncertain world.
Yep.
Which is kind of what I do professionally anyway, right?
Yes.
Make decisions in an uncertain world and see and model in my head what are the outcomes, right? And when I do it solo, I don't have to worry about it because
Right.
I can rewind that shit, right? And try again or try something different, which is one of the fun things I like to do. But if systems don't give you that,
Yeah, and you're talking about. So I had to deal with this with a number of criticisms from A Fearful Sacrifice, where people say, "Well, the first day didn't come out like it did historically when I played."
Right.
They go,
okay, I could have.
dude, right. Well, I just have to provide the vehicle that you could possibly replicate history.
Right.
Give you the circumstances where you could do that,
Right.
but it's not going to always work out that way.
Right.
And it's especially tough in battles where odd things happen, so that
And Gettysburg, a couple of odd things happened.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the whole thing is after you make the first die roll, the first move, you're playing a fictional game. And
Yes.
I know a lot of wargamers don't like to hear that, but it's true.
Right.
Every war game you play is a fictional war game.
Right. Yep. 100%.
So you're just trying to create the environment that existed in that historical period, and you're doing your own thing.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's a tough line to walk, right?
Right,
Because you
right.
don't want it to go totally off the rails. You want to give them the historical fear and context, and you might even have it. That's why it's tough to rate units sometimes, because well, I don't know. Was the 20th Maine that good? Or did they have a good day? Right. Did Heth have a bad day? Did Sickles have a bad day, or was he always later? It goes on that whole argument of like, how do you rate these guys? Do you rate them on how they perform that day, or do you rate them? Well, Stonewall Jackson's a perfect example of that. That's why if you get the stretch goals for the Most Fearful Sacrifice Kickstarter, you have Stonewall Jackson cards because, well, what if Stonewall Jackson lived and showed up at Gettysburg?
Right.
But I gave you 5 cards going from poor to legendary,
Right.
because who knows which Stonewall Jackson is going to
No.
show up that
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
Is it going to be the Stonewall Jackson of Cedar Mountain where he
Yeah,
slept
right.
and his army got his ass kicked, or did you get the legendary one where
Right.
and that is a problem with all these historical war games. Really, is how do you pre-weight it? Like Rummel was fantastic all the time, or he was at a bad day, so you rate him low, or do you rate him high and it just happened to roll badly that day? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so I've got a beef with Rommel. I love I think his leadership in Europe, early war, late war, was interesting. But Africa, he had a huge leg up with intel leaks.
Mm-hmm.
So he was receiving information before he knew what was going to happen and the plans that were going to be executed by the British before the frontline commanders did. Because he had an Egyptian telegraph guy on the payroll, and he's an American general. I forget his name. Starts with a D. His last name starts with a D. But he was an observer, and he was writing daily reports back to the United States about British readiness and capabilities and tactics and what the America need to do to be ready and able to fight a war against the Germans. And oh, by the way, here's where these units are going and what they're doing and where they're attacking and all this sort of stuff, right? And so it wasn't until the British worked out, because they actually suspected that someone was leaking information, and they gave him false information and saw the results.
Right.
And then they realized, well, it's the frickin' telegraph type guy.
Interesting.
And so that ended his intel advantage, number one, and then number two, then you had the ultra breaks.
I was just going to mention about Ultra.
Yeah, and then the Brits got the upper hand.
I know.
So
yeah, you wonder how things would have been different had Ultra not been.
Oh my goodness!
God.
Right. Even just like taking out Yamamoto, right, for the Magic.
I know.
Right? Yeah. So huge. Anyway, I love to. I wish I could remember the guy's name, but this general, and he poor guy. It wasn't his fault, but he was just trying to give really clear information, but it wasn't being secure. So,
right.
Anyway, well, anyway,
Yeah.
go. What were you going to say?
Nothing. That's an example, though. That was an example of like that kind of odd stuff.
Right.
How you work that into a war game.
Right.
Was
because everyone gives Rommel the uber leader capability, and my personal opinion, just based on one book I read, is that he wasn't. He was a great general and did do great things.
It's funny because
but Africa in particular, when he lost his edge was about the same time as Monty came in.
Right.
And
it's funny because one of the games I'm working on that I can't talk about, Rommel appears in World War One, and he was a great leader of.
Yes.
That's why he wrote the infantry attacks book.
Yep.
It was based on his experiences in World War One, and he was a
Right.
great leader of small tactical units, right?
And if you read his papers and his commentary about the opening weeks of the campaign in 1940, the attack into Belgium and France, it's amazing how daring he was.
I was just going to say, he kind of winged it.
Yeah, he and
It's
Guderian really were like pushing the envelope.
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
man, look, we got to go. Right, this is
It's
the
like-
timeline.
Right.
Catch up.
I got to roll Snake Eyes.
Yeah, I
here.
got to roll Boxcars here, baby. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, some of the stuff they do, and also, you play some of these games about that particular, the Blitzkrieg Legend, for example, and the losses the Germans took were pretty significant, achieving their objectives, but you don't really kind of get that feeling out of a lot of the games that cover that topic. So it's all like, oh, it's the Uber German, they've got some panzers and advancing quickly.
Yeah, because the French tanks were actually better than the German tanks in 1940, and they managed to,
Yeah, bad leadership, right?
Yeah, history is a fascinating thing. Like the things that could have gone wrong for the Germans early in World War II, so that World War II would have never happened, probably, right?
Well, the whole French moving the key reserves north into Belgium.
Right.
Change the game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, we go off on a tangent.
Yes, we do. We do. So I'll give you. We're at 50 minutes.
Okay.
So I'll give you your final. Like, are there things that you want to share with folks, or have you covered all the most of the titles that you think you might be designing?
I think I've covered everything. I know that when we get done with this, I'm going to go, oh, I forgot to mention.
I believe in February, you and Mark Walker are going to be on Mo's channel, on Mo's Game Table. Mo's
yes, we were supposed to be on this past Monday, but poor Mark had to go through a procedure.
Yeah. So is he doing okay?
Yeah, he's doing okay.
Okay, great. So you'll have an opportunity to address
repair the damage I've caused.
Yeah, because you get this email from all these publishers. Why the hell did you mention the game when you're on?
That's right.
I'm paying you way too much money for you to screw that up.
That's right.
So, all right. Well, listen, folks. We're out of whiskey here, and we're out of time, and we appreciate you listening in and watching.
Thank you.
And
thank you to Kev for having me.
Oh man, and thank you for hanging out with me. It's
we had a ball here.
Yeah, it's a real treat to actually meet face to face versus doing Zoom and video stuff. So it's awesome stuff. So all you guys have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Bye.